When people think of Steven Seagal, they think of one of Hollywood's most successful lead actors who redefined the genre of action and shaped the future of movie making in a way that no one has before. A man that has the charisma of Pierce Brosnan and the sexiness of Ryan Gosling. Wait, hold on a second, scratch all that. Steven Seagal has a level of delusion and a general lack of self-awareness that is beyond anything I have ever seen before in my life. He has more flops than ex-wives, and believe me, that's saying a lot. He's the worst actor I've ever seen, and he writes scripts like a toddler with a fucking crayon.
You still dangerous?
Seagal is like the guy in school who claims he has a girlfriend, but she's in a school in a different part of the country. But if he went to that school and saw her, she wouldn't be there because she's out sick, and she probably won't be in there for the rest of the semester. So you're nearly going to have to wait till next year to see her. And she's left and moved to another country with her family, so we're long distance now. He actually has an authority about filmmaking and about fighting, as well as other things, when he doesn't really know what the fuck he's talking about. He also has the most hilarious way of running that I've ever seen in my life. Now, to be fair to Seagal, there was a time in the late 80s and late 90s where he had a bit of limelight, he had a bit of glory in Hollywood, and he starred in films such as Above the Law, Under Siege, Hard to Kill, and Marked for Death. Now, Under Siege was one of the few films that actually had decent critic reviews, unlike the majority of the work that he's done since and before that. He would make his directional debut in 1994 with On Deadly Ground, featuring Michael Caine in a minor supporting role, surprisingly, and the film kind of emphasised environmental and spiritual themes, signalling a break from his, inner cop character that he was playing in all those other films. On Deadly Ground would be very poorly received by critics, and he would go on to win the Razzie Award for Worst Director, one of the only awards he's ever won in the filmmaking industry, from what I can tell. He kind of began to slowly fade away out of Hollywood and mainstream for a while. But do you think that stopped Seagal? You're goddamn right it didn't. From 2001 to pretty much now, he would go on to produce direct-to-video movies with very few theatrical releases, which of course he would write and star in. Now, as you can imagine, someone as narcissistic as Steven Seagal, in writing these movies, of course he would always play the same type of roles. He was either like an ex-Marine or a SEAL, part of the CIA, Black Ops, the Rangers. You could probably add a few more action type cliches to that if you like, and it would fit the bill pretty well. There's always the hot girl who wants to have sex with him that he's not really interested in, but he's sort of interested in. He uses body doubles for scenes that aren't even remotely necessary, like when someone's walking down the road, instead of him walking down the road, they use a body double that's clearly slimmer than he is. And he slaps the shit out of people in the most horribly choreographed fights I've ever seen in the movies. The dialogue is chunky and makes no sense most of the time, and he tends to be sitting down for most of his scenes, which to me is also hilarious. Now, the idea that Seagal writes himself as this sexy CIA agent that is the only man that can save the day, and the hot girlfriend who can't resist him, which is all basic fucking cliches, which I'm not surprised he would write. One thing I do want to say is that he also clearly doesn't know how to write a structured story. He doesn't know what the plot is because the plot's all over the place. He doesn't really have any coherent themes other than I'm a good guy with a gun and I'm going to kill the bad guy with a gun. The end. I'm going to have sex with a hot girl. That's literally as deep as it gets. The villains are so one-dimensional and their motivations aren't really clear. And even if the motivations are clear, it's usually the villain wants to take over the world, or the villain just wants to kill him, or the villain just wants more money. The most kind of basic, generic kind of motivations a character can have. Steve Seagal has written them in there, and he writes them like he's some sort of fucking genius. In fact, I would argue a 10-year-old could write a better script than Seagal could. And a lot of the time, he just adds random scenes into his movies that have no coherency, don't make any sense, and are honestly there just as filler because he needs to get to that 90-minute runtime.
Would you give your life to save the world if nobody knew you did it?
But to me, the fight scenes are the most hilarious because he's so slow in his movements. You can tell in post that they just speed it up, and he just slaps people. And it cuts a lot to the body double because he doesn't even do a lot of the fighting himself anymore. And the body double is always a slimmer version of him wearing the same clothes as Seagal that are clearly too big for him. And do you think Seagal's going to waste his own time doing that himself? Fuck no, this is Steve Seagal. He's going to get a body double to do that because he's Steve Seagal. He doesn't want to burn calories. He doesn't want to get his heart rate above a certain rate. He's perfect the way he is, as he slowly gets fatter as time passes. But I will say, I think he is the laziest filmmaker I have ever seen in my goddamn life. And I think the only reason Seagal gets away with these films being produced is one, because he probably puts a lot of his own money into it, but two, I would argue that he puts himself around people that are yes men, people that will just do yes Seagal, no Seagal. They'll do everything he wants, and whether they agree with his creative genius, which they should, of course, they will just do what he wants, because I'd say a lot of them just want their paycheck. They're not really interested in making a film that has any real depth or meaning. And this is coming from a guy that makes YouTube videos for free. Another interesting thing about Steve Seagal, and there's a question that I think a lot of us ask, is does he actually have any training in any sort of karate or jiu-jitsu or anything? Well, to be fair, he actually has some training in a Japanese type style of fighting called Aikido. Now, the reason he even has anything is because he married a Japanese girl in 1974 by the name of Miyako Fujitani. I butchered that, I apologise. Who she herself actually had a second degree black belt and was the daughter of a Aikido master. So Seagal actually went and taught at a school that Aikido's family ran and earned his Aikido black belt in 1978 through that. Now, to mention though, in 1993, Fujani, who was at that time and still is his ex-wife of many, was quoted saying the only reason Stephen was rewarded his black belt was because the judge at the time, who was famous for being lazy, fell asleep during Steve's presentation, and the judge just gave him the black belt. So even she was arguing that the black belt he'd earned isn't legit. Now, to be fair, it does also suggest even if the black belt he has is bullshit, he clearly has done some training. So it's not like he's totally full of shit, but the level of skill he claims to have is definitely full of shit. Now, some of the things Seagal claims that he did that have been refuted time and time again was, for example, he claimed that he worked with the CIA in Japan. He was quoted as saying, "They saw my abilities both with martial arts and with the language. You could say I became an advisor to the several CIA agents in the field, and through my friends in the CIA, I met many powerful people and did special works and favors," whatever that means. Now, again, his ex-wife, of course, refuted these claims, and also stated that Seagal made claims about fighting members of the Yakuza, which is a gang in Japan, if you're unaware, a criminal gang, which of course isn't true because Seagal is full of shit. Even the thought of Seagal taking on the Yakuza is hilarious to me. Seagal to me is kind of like he's very Trump-like in his persona, you know? He kind of like tries to gaslight us all to oblivion into believing the bullshit that we know deep down is bullshit, but we enjoy listening to anyway, you know? And it's hilarious, like, just kind of agreeing with things he says, because even though he's full of shit, he might not feed the ego that his fragile ego is, you know? He's a grade A bullshitter. I mean, look at the hair on his head from the 1980s and look at it now. What the fuck is that? What the fuck happened? How do you have a jet black hair at 71 years old? And goddamn it, get rid of that goatee, bro. The goatee looks fucking stupid, okay? Get rid of it. I know I have a patchy beard, okay? But I have to fucking get rid of it. Now, one thing I was surprised to learn about good old Steven Seagal, of course, is that he has some close ties with Vladimir Putin in Russia. In fact, in 2016, he was actually given Russian citizenship because apparently government spokesperson by the name of Dmitry Peskov claimed he was asking quite instantly over a period of time to be granted citizenship. That was a terrible Russian accent, I apologise, but I'm sticking to it. And also, various media and outlets cited Seagal and President Putin as being friends. And apparently, Seagal also stated that he's seen Putin as a brother. And in 2023, this year, I believe, he was bestowed the award of Order of Friendship Medal by Vladimir Putin. Imagine being friends with Putin. Like, what the fuck? If that doesn't sum up Steven Seagal. Oh, as you can imagine, Seagal is banned from Ukraine for obvious reasons. But one of the funniest things I want to talk about in my research about Seagal was a show that I did not know existed, which is fucking amazing to me, which is a show called Steven Seagal Lawman. So, just to give a bit of context about the show before we talk about the show, Seagal claimed about 20 odd years ago that while training a police station in Louisiana by the name of Jefferson Parish, he claimed that the then chief of police rewarded him the title of Reserve Deputy Sheriff. Now, Reserve Deputy Sheriff is mostly ceremonial. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. And apparently there's actually no real evidence that this actually happened because the chief has since died and there's nothing written down anywhere that actually claims that this is true. But the premise of the show is basically Steven Seagal joins up with the police officers in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, and he sits in the car as this reserve deputy sheriff. And at the start of the show, he claims that he's been a cop for 20 years and no one knew. He's not a cop. I want to make that very clear. He's not a fucking cop. He is not trained to be a cop. And the most hilarious thing to me is, like, he tries to run the show when he's there. Like, he tries to be the one in charge, but he shouldn't be because he's not the one that actually has any real power. But the most amazing thing about the show, and the fact that A&E aired this for 2 seasons to me is hilarious. But the fact that Steven Seagal and these police officers back in 2009 were literally stopping people, like racially profiling people who, as you can imagine, of course were not white, for being suspicious by like, oh, this guy handed this dude something, that's suspicious. And they would literally go up to a group of black people and harass them, and then would find some old warrant for a traffic warrant or something, and then like try to find a reason to search the car, and they would always arrest someone or threaten to arrest people. It was just purely racist, to be honest. And the fact that A&E would actually take part in something that's so clearly fucked goes to show how fucked up the police situation was back then. And even back then, that was before police cameras were a thing. Could you imagine what they were getting away with? I'm reserve deputy sheriff, I've been a police officer for 20 years. Now thankfully that show ended after 3 seasons, and the reason the 3rd season ended, which I will get into now, is because unsurprisingly Steven Seagal has had some lawsuits. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, what could the great Steven Seagal be accused of? Well, the list ranges. A lot of it is pretty fucked up, I can tell you. He's had multiple sexual assault allegations from assistants and fellow actors. A lot of the times these cases were settled out of court. There was a couple of occasions where judges actually did dismiss cases because of lack of evidence. But I mean, that being said, like, there's no smoke without fire. Like, if you've had multiple women come out and say that they were assaulted sexually by Steven Seagal and he was willing to pay them off, that would suggest guilt to me. But of course we cannot say that for sure. But is he capable of doing it? I fucking think so. Now, one of the most surprising things to me about Steven Seagal, which shocked me, was the fact that he actually has 2 music albums. One by the name of Songs from the Crystal Cave, which was apparently a mix of pop, world, country and blues. And it actually featured duets with Tony Rebel, Little Stitchy and Stevie Wonder, which was fucking shocking to me. He then would release his second album called Mojo Priest, which released in April 2006. Now, I would play you some of these tracks, but I will get demonetized, so I'm not going to do that. But check them out. Check out the albums. They're so bad that they're good, you know. And some of the songs, in fairness, aren't actually that bad. You'd be surprised. But they weren't overly like destroyed by the critics like you'd expect the Steven Seagal project to be, in fairness to him. But yeah, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was his infamous SNL appearance. Reportedly, Seagal made life hard for the Saturday Night Live cast. While hosting the show in 1991, he was apparently very critical of the cast and writing staff. And according to Tim Meadows, Seagal didn't realise that you can't tell somebody they're stupid on Wednesday and expect them to continue writing for you on Saturday. David Spade claimed in his 6 years on the show, Seagal was the absolute worst host he's ever experienced with. Seagal also wanted to perform a sketch where he played a therapist who wants to sleep with a rape survivor. That is insane. How is that? Oh, you know what? So obviously here, Seagal's grandioso, narcissistic way of thinking. He actually thought he was funnier than the SNL writers, so I don't even blame them for like banning him, because they did. He was banned from ever hosting again because he was such an insufferable asshole. But another funny thing that happened that I wanted to mention, just as a side note, was during the filming of one of his films by the name of Out for Justice, Seagal allegedly said that no one could choke him out, claiming he had a special move that prevented anyone from putting him to sleep. So naturally, this dude by the name of Gene LaBelle, who was a pioneer in martial arts and worked on thousands of movies and TV shows, accepted this challenge. And when the two guys fought, within seconds, LaBelle had Seagal in a rear naked choke. And the secret crazy move that Seagal had that could stop people from choking him out was just hitting the dude in the bollocks. So he hit him in the balls. And unfortunately for Seagal, it did not stop LaBelle from making Seagal pass out. And apparently when Seagal woke up, he reacted very aggressively and angrily. So I think it's fair to say Seagal is a man with many, many delusions. A man who surrounds himself with people who are yes men, who tell him oh yes Seagal, you're amazing, yes, make that poorly produced movie, yes, of course you can play the ex-marine who's killed 100 people in Afghanistan, that has 20 women that wants to bang you. Of course, Seagal, it makes total sense. Yes, Seagal, your hair is real. We totally believe you. Yes, we know you can fucking knock me out. We get it, man. And we know you're the sexiest man alive. And no, you're not at all chubby and old now. Not even remotely. But he's a man who's almost too genius for the movie industry that he helped change and mold. He's someone that we all, I think, love to hate. And when Seagal eventually passes on, God forbid, we should study his brain. See what's going on in there. Is there a brain in there? Is there anything in there? Or is it just an empty space? Because that's where I'm betting. But, you know, you could argue that his content is so bad it's entertaining. Like, it brought me some joy watching some of the stuff because it was so hilariously bad to me. Because a lot of it comes across as satire when it's just clearly not satire, and you're just like, is this real? Is he being serious? For me, what I would want to say to you, Stephen, is please keep making movies. Please keep showing us how to make amazing action movies, showing us how to fight, showing us how to live deluded and ageless, and continue to show us the clear sex symbol that you are. Because without Steven Seagal, I think the world would be a truly boring place. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if you like Steven Seagal, if you've watched any of his movies, if you listen to any of his music, anything at all. Defend him, hate him, give me any sort of thing, any sort of fact about him that I forgot about. Please mention it, because I didn't cover everything about Seagal's life, because there's a lot. But these are the things I found most interesting. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Peace out.